Hello and welcome back to Lean on Success, where process improvement is self-improvement. My name is Ben. I'm a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, and today we're going to get very briefly into a topic that a lot of you have been asking about. When is it the best time to buy a car? We're going to get into that. Now, before we get into that, I want to give all of you an update on all of the economic reports that came out last month, because that's going to set the stage for our conversation about timing for buying another car.
Hit the like button and please subscribe so my daddy can get me new toys. Thanks!
Now, earlier in the month of June, the May inflation report came out, and inflation had gone down to a 4% increase in the month of May. So as you can see by this chart that's been tracking CPI from the 60s until today, we are starting to reverse course from the record highs that we saw in 2021 and 2022, where the inflation has decreased to 4%. Now, the green line represents the target that the Fed is chasing, which is a 2% goal. So while inflation is moving in the right direction, it's still well above the 2% goal that the Fed is targeting. You can also see that when you exclude food and energy from the CPI numbers, you can see that the CPI rate is still well above what it's been over the last 20 years. Now, here is a chart that I found to be very interesting that was released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. When you look at the average number of hours worked per week, you see a very interesting trend that started happening around 2021. What we're seeing is that employees are working fewer hours than they used to back when the pandemic recession first started. Now, this is suggesting that labor demand is starting to cool off. Now, in response to those lower CPI numbers, the Federal Reserve decided to pause their interest rate hikes. Now, this was pretty important because this was the first time in over a year that the Federal Reserve decided not to raise interest rates. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Fed is trying to drive the inflation rate down to 2%. What they really want, ideally, is for inflation to drop below the unemployment rate. Right now, inflation is at 4%, unemployment is at 3.7%. So what they're trying to do is get that inflation number below the unemployment number, because that will signify that the economy is stabilizing. Now, there are a lot of economists and experts out there that are making a big deal about this pause, indicating that there may be a pivot where the Fed starts to slash rates again. I don't personally think that's going to happen, despite the fact that we see how sensitive Wall Street is and how the stock market kind of had a big boom right after the Fed announced it was going to pause interest rates, because there's a lot of pressure in the financial markets being placed on the Fed to bring those interest rates back down so that they can make more money, right? So there's a lot of pressure that's being added, and the Fed is actually taking a lot of heat or a lot of blame for the economy situation to be the way that it is. Some of it I personally think is warranted. Some of it I don't think is warranted. The bottom line is this particular pause doesn't mean a whole lot until we start to get into July. And here's what I mean. These are the dates that we need to watch coming up for the month of July. Firstly, the new jobs report is going to come out on July 7th. The new inflation report is going to come out on July 12th. Now, here's something else that I thought was really interesting. The Fed is going to have its next meeting to decide what it's going to do with interest rates on July the 26th. However, the next GDP report comes out the following day on July 27th. What I find particularly interesting about that is, if you recall, GDP, or the gross domestic product, is one of the primary metrics we use to determine whether we are headed towards a recession or not. The public release of that report is coming out a day after the Fed is going to make its decision about interest rates. Now, I'm pretty sure that the Fed is going to get an advanced copy of that report to give them more information about what's happening from an interest rate standpoint. But it's going to be very interesting to see how those two things will play out against each other coming up this month. All right. Let's get down to brass tacks now. A lot of you have been asking me, how much longer should I wait to buy a vehicle? Let's get into it. All right. So I want to frame this conversation by talking about three things. I want to talk about necessities, I want to talk about conveniences, and I want to talk about luxuries. Now, necessities are things that you have to have: food, clothing, shelter, medication for certain illnesses, etc., etc. These are things that you literally cannot live without. You must have them. Now, conveniences are things that aren't essential for us to live our lives, but they make our lives a lot easier. For example, a washing machine. Not essential for life, but it makes life a lot easier. For most Americans, a vehicle is a convenience. Now, I have the good fortune of being able to work from home where I don't need to commute to work every day. But even when I had to commute to work every day, I could have chosen to ride the bus. I didn't absolutely have to have a vehicle. However, owning my own car and being able to leave and return the times that I want to leave and return make it a lot more convenient for my life. Now, last thing are luxuries. Luxuries are things that are not essential to your life, and they don't necessarily make your life easier, but they add a certain amount of quality and or status to your life. So, for example, taking a cruise ship vacation as an example. That's a luxury. That's not something that you have to have, and it doesn't necessarily make your life any easier to live. It's just a status or something that adds quality to the experience of your overall life. Now, what does all of that have to do with car purchases? Well, there are three things that I want to posit to you, and these are going to be somewhat controversial, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of comments about it. Here's the first thing. Any new car purchase, that's a luxury. That's not something that you have to have, and it doesn't necessarily make your life any more convenient than buying a used car. People buy new cars because they want new cars. They want to be the first owner. They want to have that special experience, that special new car smell. But that's a luxury. That's something you could live your whole life without, and it wouldn't really make your life any easier. The second thing is, all exotic car purchases are certainly luxuries. These are things that you will never need in your life. They won't make your life any easier. And the last thing is, any car that's an additional car, it's a weekend car, it's not a daily driver. Anytime you're buying a car that's not a daily driver, that's a luxury. It doesn't make your life any more convenient and is not essential for you to continue to live your life. So based on my observation, based on everything that I've seen and everything that I've shown you in the videos that I've done previously regarding the economy, I believe the best time to purchase a vehicle is going to be from August of this year through February of next year. Why do I say that? Firstly, we know that 2024 model year cars are going to be released, and that's going to prompt a lot of discounts and price slashing on existing new cars that are currently on lots to make room for the new cars that are coming in for the new model year. Secondly, we're starting to see somewhat of a normal level of seasonality as it relates to sales. We saw that there was a lull in the winter, that prices and sales started to pick up in the spring, and they're continuing to show strong in the summer, which is a normal seasonal pattern. So I believe that pattern is going to continue throughout the end of the year. Also, as we talked about just a minute ago, a lot of new cars, non-daily drivers, and exotic cars, all of these luxuries people have, they're going to start getting dumped onto the market as layoffs worsen, because I still believe that our historically low unemployment rate isn't sustainable, and we are going to see more layoffs as we get further into the summer, which means that people are going to start dumping their extra cars in order to get cash. It's important for us to understand that economic shifts don't happen overnight. They take a while to implement and they take a while to go away. So all of these high interest rates that we're currently seeing, they're going to continue to be historically high this year and going into next year. Because it's not like the Fed is going to drop the interest rates by 3% in 1 month. We're going to see historically high interest rates for the foreseeable future, regardless of what the Fed is going to do. Now, we also know, and what we've talked about in previous videos, is as the Fed continues to tighten the money supply, in other words, as the Fed continues to raise interest rates, banks are going to start tightening as well. They're going to start raising their interest rates and making credit less available, What this means is that getting a loan on a car is going to get harder and it's going to be more expensive. The interest rates are going to be higher. The banks will not be offering car loans as much as they did previously because of how expensive those loans are. So, based on all of that, you should be prepared to put down at least 20% on a used car and as much as 50% down or more on a new car. Putting down a high down payment on a new car, number one, it shelters you from those ridiculously high interest rates you're going to pay on your car loan, but also it helps to protect you against depreciation against that car. So you can pretty much ensure by putting down 50% or more that you'll be able to get into a car note that you can afford, as well as have equity in the car even as it depreciates. Did you find any of this interesting? Did I get something completely wrong? Did I completely bore you to death? Let me know down in the comments. Share this video with your friends. Until next time.